Good morning. This is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2016 for your daily weather briefing, and this is a special severe weather edition. We've not done one of these for a while, so we figured we'd probably get back into it as we're now entering into the summer months, and we like to get back in the habit of doing this. So we're going to take a look at some severe weather parameters today and talk about the situation that's developing across the United States and just kind of talk about the severe weather setup. But first thing we're going to take a look at is the current weather situation across the United States. It's quite warm, pretty much frontal system bisecting the middle section of the United States. Everything south of that front is experiencing summer-like conditions. Everything north of that front, yeah, I would say it's early summer temperatures, not too bad, pretty comfortable at this point in time. Temperatures range from I would say the mid 50s just along the Montana border and up in the northeast all the way down to the 90s in the cooking southwest and in the very warm and humid southeastern portion of the United States. And along that frontal system, you can see where the activity is taking place. We've got some scattered showers and some thunderstorms up here around North Dakota and Minnesota. And there's a good batch of showers and thunderstorms that are moving through the Midwest right now between Illinois and Indiana. And we'll talk about that and highlight that with the severe weather risk later. And then there's some showers and thunderstorms, mostly showers right now, and around New Hampshire and the also Vermont areas there too. Some of these showers are off the southwestern coast are false echoes out here. And this was showing up last night, so there's not really a lot of precipitation out here by any means. Now moving on to the watch warning map, we've got a lot of heat advisories continuing and excessive heat warnings still in the southwest here for the high temperatures that are going on. In the central part of the United States, we have some heat advisories associated with the high temperatures and the humidity that's across Missouri right now. And then there's some special weather statements and some flood advisories that are in effect and some flood watches for some heavy rains going to be happening down later on down the road tonight as this storms continue to pretty much go over the same area across the Midwest. Looking at the visible satellite, not a lot of clouds out here in the west. Pretty good storm system beginning to come into this northwestern portion of the United States. A lot of clouds, mainly fog along the California coast here. That's normal during this time of the year. Some scattered clouds associated with some debris clouds from thunderstorms across the Rockies as the heat begins to heat up the moisture that's available in the atmosphere, and you get the so-called monsoon thunderstorms, really just summer thunderstorms for the differential heating that's happening in the atmosphere over the mountainous regions. But really, the biggest weather is associated with this storm system that's in the central portion of the United States, north central portion of the United States, and the warm front that extends all the way down across the upper Midwest. And you can see scattered showers and thunderstorms riding along that warm front. But you got this warm air and moist air that's pushing up over this warm front and is causing unstable atmosphere, and you're getting showers and thunderstorms north of that warm front. And then there's a weak disturbance right now that's over Montreal, and it's moving through the northeast right now. It's producing a decent band of showers and thunderstorms in that area. And then looking at the radar, we can see again that these are pretty much false echoes out here. There's not a lot going out here, but we do have thunderstorms just south of the Winnipeg area, north of Bismarck, and then the bigger batch of showers and storms, much heavier with some heavy rains. But most of this activity is beginning to weaken between roughly, Davenport, Iowa, all the way down to Lexington, Kentucky, and just south of Columbus, and then a line of showers and storms to the southeast of Montreal, north of Boston, in the northeast here. Now let's look at the severe weather situation that's going to be taking place. Looking at yesterday's severe weather, we had quite a few high wind reports, and that's not surprising. We had a few isolated tornado reports. We had a tornado report over in Maryland, and then also a couple of tornado reports in North Dakota. None of these really significant, and mostly stayed out of areas, so not a lot of damage that occurred with these. But we did have quite a few wind reports and wind damage reports. So even though it wasn't a severely active day, it was pretty active in the sense there was quite a lot of activity going on along this warm front. So what we're going to look at today is the severe weather risk, and we have a moderate risk of severe thunderstorms that extends all the way from Cedar Rapids through Indianapolis, including the Chicago area, all the way into Dayton, Ohio, around to the Cincinnati, Ohio area. Surrounding that risk, we have an enhanced risk And then around that area, we have a slight risk and marginal risks that cover quite a large area. We're going to talk about why we think this is happening. And then again, we got the scattered afternoon and evening showers and storms that form out here in the mountains in the southwest, which will begin to increase as we begin to move towards July and August as more moisture begins to come from Mexico and the Gulf of California. Looking at the tornado risk, we have a 10% tornado risk around the Chicago area there. That's not super high, and we'll discuss why that's not really high at this point in time. Looking at the hail, there is a decent hail chance at 15% hail risk between Indianapolis, Chicago, and Cedar Rapids. But really, the biggest factor that they're looking for today is the wind damage and significant wind damage that could take place. A 45% chance within a given point of 25 miles of a given point, all the way extending from Cedar Rapids down to Indianapolis, over to Dayton, up to just north of Fort Wayne, Indiana, including the Chicago area. And again, around that area is a 30% chance. And really, this is really, I think, what they're concerned about today is the widespread wind damage that could take place today. Now, let's take a look at the current weather conditions. Current dew points. We have a lot of moisture south of this warm front that's streaming north and butting up against this warm front. Dew points north of this front, even though they're in the mid 60s, it's quite a range when you got dew points in the 75 range just below it. So the moisture is not a question whatsoever. There's plenty of moisture. Now, the next thing I want to look at here is a couple of skew T-plots, and this is out of Davenport, Iowa. And what we see here is a pretty saturated column of air. So the air is not going to be super unstable at this point in time. And a lot of that, again, is because it's they shot this weather balloon up and there was storms in place at this time. So the conditions are not really favorable for a massive severe weather outbreak to take place at this point. Now, the part that's going to be important here is, will these storms move out of the area, and you'll be able to get some heating going on, and that's really what's going to be key here. Another thing we need to look at here is really the wind flow, the directional shear here. Now, the directional shear in Davenport, Iowa, is a little bit better than it is in Lincoln, Nebraska, Lincoln, Oklahoma, Lincoln, Illinois, and we'll look at that in just a moment here. But again, the parameters are pretty weak here. Not a lot of stuff going on as far as CAPE values and so forth. And even the lapse rates are pretty weak at this point, but we expect that to change, and that's the reason why we're concerned. Looking a little bit more towards the southeast in Illinois, a little bit more of an unstable atmosphere, a little bit of a dry punch coming in there. We do have a little bit of warming above the 500 millibar level, and a weak mid-level CAPE convective available energy. So, any thunderstorms that come in the area are going to have something to work with and continue, but nothing that's going to be super potent or severe at this point in time, because there's not a lot going on. We do have some wide hodograph values here, but again, we've got really kind of a messy low to mid-level when it comes to wind flow. So as far as tornadoes go at this point in time, nothing really. I think it would be very difficult to get kind of the rotation that needs to be there for tornadoes at this point. Now, here's the situation that I want to talk about here. The temperatures currently at this point in time north of this warm front are in the 60s, but we have super heated air below this. Temperatures already at 8 a.m., well, 8 a.m. Western time where I'm located, but at 15Z, temperatures in Mount Vernon are already at 90 degrees, and at St. Louis, these temperatures are expected to get in the 100-degree range. And this is where we get into the concern about a derecho forming at this point in time. The potential is, with this superheating that takes place and butts up against this warm front, you get this rapid cooling of the atmosphere, and you get an influx of heating at the surface, and you get high CAPE values that cause explosive thunderstorm development. And then when these thunderstorms that develop, they begin to create their own natural cold front, cold pool system, and they race off towards the southeast. Especially if you have a strong northwest flow aloft, and that's where you get into those high-end wind damage potentials. And I think that's why we have the moderate risk in place here, is because I think the National Weather Service is concerned, even though they've not mentioned that at this point in time, there is a potential there could be. So we'll have to monitor that down the road here. Now, looking at the CAPE values, again, the surface CAPE values, convective available potential energy. Not a lot north of the front. There's a little bit over Indiana and eastern portions of Illinois, but really the strongest CAPE values close to, right now at this point, almost 3,500 joules per kilogram around the Evansville area. Again, this flow though is moving towards the north, and this warm front will be pushing more towards the north. So the atmosphere, the line delineation of this warm front, where this ends up being, is going to be where the greatest potential for severe weather will be. Looking at the convective inhibition, again, north of the front right now, it's limited due to the fact that you've got a lot of clouds and precipitation in place. So the atmosphere hasn't quite overturned yet at this point in time. However, lifted indices are well into the close to the -10 to -11 range at this point south of Illinois and Indiana. Again, this moisture is going to be flowing, and this activity is going to be flowing towards the northeast, so this will be increasing. And now we look at the storm relative helicity values. Here are plus 500 out here around Cedar Rapids and Des Moines, Iowa. Now this will be moving towards the southeast as this surface moisture moves towards the northeast. So you're going to have quite a bit of rotation that's going to be available for storms that do form. And this makes sense because if we look at the 850 millibar wind flow, you can see a pretty strong southwesterly jet of about 40 to 50 knots coming into where that helicity value is. You can see a pretty strong 850 millibar low out here just to the northwest of Des Moines, Iowa. This will be riding down the northwest flow aloft. So with that, in conjunction with this low-level winds, you're going to have decent rotation, and we expect storms that develop later today and tonight to become quite significant. Looking at the 850 millibar winds, again, across this in half, the right rear is where the most significant helicity is located at this point in time. And we got a pretty decent jet coming in here. The jet stream winds are around 80, almost pushing 90 knots here. So you have a lot of wind aloft, a lot of wind at the surface here. That's the reason why I think they've got a pretty decent chance here for some significant wind damage to take place anywhere from those areas in the moderate risk that we talked about. Now looking at the 12-hour simulated radar, now again we have to understand that this is not going to be where the storms are going to be located. It gives you kind of an idea though that this warm front will be pushing a little bit more to the north, and you'll see showers and thunderstorms to develop. Now this is about 8 p.m. tonight Eastern time, so we'll see a pretty significant area of showers and thunderstorms. A little concerned, instead of showing kind of a line of storms, we're showing a little bit more broken areas of storms. That could pose a potential tornado risk down the road. So we're going to have to monitor that situation as we get closer. I really think it's probably going to be more of a line than it will be isolated storms. But again, we'll have to watch that and see what happens here. Anyway, either one of these storms are going to be very strong to severe with the potential for a lot of wind damage associated with it. So let's kind of review today. We have the pros of the situation. We have very strong speed shear aloft. Winds again are pushing around between about 80 and 90 knots, about 500 millibar, which gives us a strong mid-level jet. We have a decent low-level jet, which gives us decent storm relative helicity. We also have significant heating along the warm front, which is important because that's going to cause a very high CAPE explosive atmosphere down the road if the clouds can move out. And that's what brings up the cons of the event. The directional shear is messy, so that's going to reduce the tornado risk, although there could be a few isolated tornadoes. I don't think we're going to be looking at anything that's greater than an F2, but the potential could be there. Saturated atmosphere right now, that's another con right now. The atmosphere is very saturated, which brings us down to the CAPE and clouds question. Will the CAPE be there if the clouds don't clear out? Right now, the CAPE values are low because of the fact the clouds are out. So it depends on how fast that warm front moves to the top, moves northeastward. We have a very weak low-level shear area, so I think that kind of reduces the tornado risk. But we do have, a little bit further up from the atmosphere, we do have a little bit better winds aloft. So the potential there for rotating thunderstorms is much higher, but we just may not get that down to the surface. So what do I expect at this point? Right now, I'm kind of thinking a high enhanced risk and a low moderate risk. So anywhere between an enhanced moderate risk, I kind of um, but it could go into a pretty solid moderate risk if we get the heating that needs to take place today. Will we get to a high risk later? I think that depends on the circumstances. So what we're looking at right now in understanding severe weather risk descriptions, when we look at an enhanced risk, we're looking at more persistent or widespread or intense severe thunderstorms, more numerous, which I expect. There might be a few tornadoes there. So I'm kind of more in this range right now at this point. Now, I think the Weather Service is going with a moderate risk because they think it might be a little bit more long-lived and widespread. Will we have strong tornadoes? I don't think this is the issue we're looking at here. I think we're looking at more widespread wind damage. So I think that's the reason why they've gone a moderate risk there in this aspect. If we get to a derecho, obviously they would increase to a high risk area because we would be talking about a very long, very widespread, particularly intense derecho that could develop later on. But I don't think we're going to get to that level. So we're somewhere in between here at this point in time. That's kind of where I'm agreeing. A lot of it depends on the clouds and how quickly they move out. If they do not move out in time, we might drop down to a slight risk. So we'll keep you advised throughout the day. We'll be doing live streaming on our StormQuest uh, Ustream account. So keep us, keep your eyes there so you can keep an eye on live radar and any updates that need to take place. We thank you for watching and have a great day.